is to dry fit a batch of stones in place before we start cementing them on the wall. To achieve a really strong bond between the sandstone and the concrete, I use my tile rake to scrape off the excess. I butter the back of our sandstone bricklet. I squeeze the tile in place.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
Now that our concrete foundation's all set up, we're going to start laying our sandstone. We're going to be laying stone for the staircase and the pathway back and forth. This way we can let elements dry before we have to add on to them. I need to set these ones in before I can start to do the sides. This way we won't be bumping any of our stones whilst they're still soft.
In our last episode, we got the beginning of the crazy paved pathway established and set out the formula for the first course of vertical stones that are going to wrap around the concrete staircase.
So the plan today is to get these bricks all started along this wall. We've got to work in courses just like laying normal bricks, because the tiles we stick on here or the stone we stick on here has to set up before we get the next piece on top. These are now stuck down solid enough that we can work on top of them.
My strategy was to use a lot of the stones that are smaller and have a rough texture on them. This way I could save the larger pieces of flat stone for the crazy paved pathway. After establishing the size we'd need for our stone tiles, I cut them on the wet saw and returned them in place in preparation for sticking them on with the tile cement. One of the systems I'll be using throughout this entire process is to dry fit a batch of stones in place before we start cementing them on the wall or on the pathway. I'm using some scrap pieces of timber to hold the sandstone tiles in place, so I know I've got a really tight fit when it comes to sticking them on the wall. Ceramicrete tile cement has a limited time you can work with it, so I mix it in small batches as needed. To achieve a really strong bond between the sandstone and the concrete, I want to make sure I get a really good coverage of the tile cement product on both surfaces. I use my trowel and paint scraper to apply a really thick bed of the material across the entire face of the concrete. I take my time and use small blobs of material and work slowly and steady so I don't get any unwanted tile cement on the previously laid stone. I'm also using this towel to help catch any spills and to stop the stone from getting scratched. After getting a nice thorough coverage on my concrete and cleaning up any spills, I use my tile rake to scrape off the excess. The tile rake has notches in it. This helps keep control of the amount of material we're leaving on the concrete. I butter the back of our sandstone bricklet with a really generous amount of material. This particular sandstone product has special grooves cut in the back side of it, which are designed to adhere to our tile cement, so I want to push them all the way into these nooks and crannies. I want at least 3 mm thickness of material on this bricklet. Once I've tidied up all the edges, making sure I don't leave any bare patches, I squeeze the tile in place. By tapping gently with my rubber hammer, I can line up the tile into the correct position. I double check with my spirit level to make sure it's vertical, and then adjust it with my rubber hammer to get it just right. I repeat the process for the entire first course that wraps around the concrete staircase.
When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been has been. There's no use in going back, wishing back. You master how to simplify.
up our leftover tile cement, I'm going to stick another piece of stone on the pathway. The idea is to add enough tile cement so it's thicker than the packers we've set for the right height of the stone. Once I've got enough product on the concrete foundation, I butter the back of the stone. I don't want too much cement on the back of the stone, just a nice thin coverage. I return the packers to their original position, pushing them into the tile cement. The tile cement should be sitting higher than the packers. This is what's going to make the contact with the stone and create a really good adhesion in our system. By pushing the sandstone down firmly onto our foundation, you should be able to feel the tile cement squeezing out from the sides. When I'm satisfied the stone's pushed all the way down onto the packers, I double check with my small level to make sure we've got a nice flat join. We're not necessarily going to get a perfect match between one stone and the other because of the unevenness in the natural stone product, but I'm just trying to get it as close as I practically can. I'm cleaning the stone with a wet sponge. I don't want this cement to set up on the stone or stain it, so I try and keep it clean as we go. I'm using an extra thin trowel to tidy up these edges. This tool easily fits in the gaps we have between our stones. When the stone is squeezed into place, we end up with some excess on some of the edges and also some small voids. This small trowel helps me tidy up all the edges so we have a nice solid contact. I'm using a combination of a scourer and a sponge to clean up the piece.
And the windows are closing. You let the world know that what has been, and there's no use looking back, going back, wishing back.
I need to periodically replenish our stone supply from the pallet at the front of the property.
You master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. Oh, when the wind blows.
The first course of bricks is set up strong enough for me to start working on the end of the staircase. I want to use one piece of stone for this end bottom piece. I use my spirit level to mark out a pencil line so when we set this stone it's plumb to the rest of the course. I take a rough measurement so I can find a piece of stone that's going to fit all the way across. The formula I use for stone selection is usually based on which stone will create the least amount of waste when I cut it down to size. When I've found a stone that looks appropriate, I do a quick double check with my tape measure to make sure it's going to fit the dimensions we need. I move it to my wet saw and using my set square I mark out the dimensions we need to cut it down to.
When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been has been. There's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back. You master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. Oh, when the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know.
This corner joint has a bit of an overhang due to the roughness on the piece of stone we're attaching it to. So I'm going to custom cut a little notch. It's easier to use my small grinder than the wet saw to make these smaller regular cuts. With the entire first course of the staircase complete, we're going to move on to putting the horizontal pieces on the first step. For design purposes and aesthetics, I want these horizontal stones to match the bricklets we put on the front part of the step. I created a system when I laid out all these stones on the pallets, with the largest ones being closest to the road. I check the piece of stone I've selected with my tape measure, and when I'm satisfied it's got enough to cover the area we want, I use my set square to pencil out a line as a guide to help me cut it on the wet saw. To help the tile cement blend better with the sandstone, I'm putting a sandstone pigment inside the tile cement mix.
Sipping coffee under the apple tree. This gentle manly. Well, you're a good man, quite the best man, a real fine man. When the wind blows and the windows are closing,
I'm using the same process to stick these stair pieces down as we did the crazy paving. The only difference is it's a larger area of mortar and stone to stick down in one session. As always, the most important part is to have complete coverage on all the surfaces so we get a really strong adhesion from our stone and concrete.
you master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. Oh, when the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been, and there's no use looking back, going back, wishing back.
An important part of laying these large square paving stones for our stairs is to make sure they end up really tight together so the outside edge lines up with the bricks that we previously laid on the side of the staircase.
Blue sky. Oh, when the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know what has been.
Join me in the next episode as we return our attention back to the crazy paving pathway.
You master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. Oh, when the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been, and there's no use looking back, going back, wishing back.
Thanks for joining me this week on my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.